to the Speech Collective podcast. My name is David Rosen. Today, I want to share my story about growing up with a speech impediment and what I've learned along the way. I didn't always realize I spoke differently. It really started becoming clear around 7 years old when I was first asked to read books aloud and I was unable to complete full sentences without lengthy pauses. At that age, you don't really have the words to explain what's happening. You just feel it when people look at you differently, or when saying a simple sentence feels incredibly difficult. In the United States, about 1 in 12 children between the ages of 3 and 17 have had a disorder related to speech, language, or voice. That's around 7.7% of children, according to the CDC. Globally, the World Health Organization estimates that over 5% of the world's population, which is about 430 million people, have some kind of disabling communication disorder, including speech and language challenges. My speech impediment made things that seem easy for most people, like ordering food at a restaurant, answering a question in class, and meeting someone new, feel overwhelming. I remember specifically in 5th grade when the class was rehearsing for our moving up ceremony to middle school, and I was unable to pronounce basic words in Hebrew for the event. There are different types of speech impediments. Some, like stuttering, affect the flow of speech. Others, like articulation disorders, make certain sounds hard to pronounce. And then there are voice disorders, which affect how your voice sounds. Pitch, volume, or quality. For me, it was a blockage, which made it difficult to enunciate without feeling an immediate stop throughout the middle of a word or sentence. Sometimes when you're struggling to speak, it can feel lonely, but it's important to remember you're not alone. Even some of the most famous and powerful people in history have had speech impediments. King George of England had a stutter so severe that he dreaded public speaking. But during World War II, he delivered some of the most important speeches in British history. Former President Joe Biden also struggled with a stutter growing up. Winston Churchill, who rallied Britain during the war, had speech issues too. And even stars like Emily Blunt and Bruce Willis have spoken openly about their battles with speech. Their stories and mine show that a speech impediment does not define your intelligence, your strength, or your future. I first started getting real help in the summer of 2023 when my uncle discovered through an acquaintance an organization called Dr. Fluency, owned by David Harris. This was the topic of my first podcast episode. Dr. Fluency uses innovative technologies which focuses on remedying speech pathologies from the root of the issue. At first, I was dismissive, thinking to myself, oh no, another failed attempt to rectify my speech. It wasn't easy. There were days when practicing felt exhausting, when progress felt invisible. But I remember a breakthrough moment of my first day of classes in fall of 2023. This was the beginning of my sophomore year of high school, when I'd speak to my teachers and classmates. Instead of having an automatic blockage in speech, I was able to enunciate full sentences clearly and comfortably express myself. Something people often misunderstand is that struggling to speak doesn't mean struggling to think. I always knew exactly what I wanted to say. Getting it out was the hard part. And as tough as it was, it taught me a lot about patience, about empathy, and about how important it really is to listen to other people. I've learned to manage and overcome my speech impediment. No one can choose the cards they are dealt, but through hard work and determination, it is possible to solve even the most difficult of circumstances. Furthermore, I have learned important lessons which will serve me well into my future. For instance, I realized that the hardest part was not just the words. It was the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of being judged. But I've also realized that every time I speak, I'm choosing courage over fear. If there is one thing I would like to tell anyone listening who's struggling with a speech impediment, it's this. Never let shame nor fear discourage you from overcoming difficult obstacles in life. And I'm not just talking about speech impediments. It applies to everything from school to sports to your dreams. Fight to make them happen. Your voice matters, and even when it's hard to find it, it's still yours, and it's still powerful. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to the Speech Collective podcast for more stories, advice, and inspiration.